programs that have their own proprietary format, and you may be receiving that data from many different sources. So I just want to kind of get a good cross-section of what we're dealing with online here today to understand what file formats are important to you. So let's start with that question here. I'm going to launch a poll. What file formats are important to you? Maybe you have, a seat of competitive CAD in-house. Maybe you're using another CAD program currently. Maybe you're getting data from vendors. So I'm trying to get just a good cross-section here. Give a few more seconds, let people vote, and share with you the results. Okay, it looks like, between Inventor and Pro-E, that seems to be predominant numbers here, so that helps me get a good idea of what we're dealing with. Next question, if you're using CAD, obviously, what is your primary CAD? Are you currently an Inventor house, SOLIDWORKS house, UG, so on? Give some time here to see. And I had to put another in there because I didn't have enough space for everything else. Maybe you're CATIA, and I kind of tossed CATIA in there, but want to kind of get an idea. I figure most of us are probably SOLIDWORKS, but we do have some competitive CAD in here, so I want to make sure we get time there. So let me go ahead and just share those results so everyone has an idea. Okay, now next question, if SOLIDWORKS is your primary CAD, which was 75%, do you maintain seats of other CAD as well? These are obviously pointed questions. We believe that Interconnect kind of changes the game in how we deal with other CAD formats. So we wanted to just kind of see, how many of you are maintaining these other seats in-house just to deal with these other formats. All right, I'll go ahead and share that. And my last poll today has to do with the product that we're talking about, SOLIDWORKS Interconnect. SOLIDWORKS Interconnect was released in 2017. We'll talk about where we get it and how we use it and go through the incidentals. But I want to see who has maybe potentially stumbled upon Interconnect within the interface. If you're a SOLIDWORKS user, you would have. If you're a CAD user from another program, you may not have. So I'll give some time to vote here. And I am absolutely shocked by this. I'm glad a lot of people are on here. Let me go ahead and close this poll here and share that. So it looks like only a few of you have actually tried Interconnect. So I think today's a great opportunity to introduce you to a new tool called SOLIDWORKS Interconnect, and hopefully show you where it fits and where we think SOLIDWORKS is going with this new tool and how it's going to change the game when we deal with these programs. So ease the pain when using other CAD formats using SOLIDWORKS Interconnect. First question we obviously have to answer is, what is 3D Interconnect? Well, we know we have SOLIDWORKS, but a lot of times an assembly, when it's put together, consists of files from Pro-E or Creo, from Inventor, from NX, from Solid Edge, and CATIA. Our hope with Interconnect is to bring them all into SOLIDWORKS to work together. Now the philosophy is a little deeper than that. The philosophy really is that SOLIDWORKS is trying to develop this so you can seamlessly work with the content as if it was created in SOLIDWORKS. Now that seems like a tall tale, but I'll let you draw your own conclusions here at the end today. We want to be able to pull it into SOLIDWORKS and have it feel like that model was built in SOLIDWORKS originally. Okay, so that's the goal with Interconnect. Who's it for? I've kind of outlined 3 types of users. I would imagine that this encompasses most of you. We have some of you online that are getting supplier content. You might be going out to 3D Content Central or GrabCAD or out to the manufacturer's site, and you're finding content. you're finding models to download. Maybe they're not in SOLIDWORKS format. Maybe they're in, another CAD format, and you need to be able to utilize them. So that's one individual that we would focus this particular product on. Another type of user is what we'll call today the design vendor. This is that outside firm or other organization that you work with on a regular basis that may use another CAD package. Maybe you're a SOLIDWORKS house, but they design in Pro E. Well, you need to be able to go back and forth between each other, getting the CAD file up to date in the latest version of SOLIDWORKS to make sure we can have any updates required happen automatically. And then the third is organizations that are just still multi-CAD. Maybe you're a consulting firm and you are dictated by your customers on what products that you are required to use. Well, in those cases, there's seats of Inventor and Pro E and NX and Solid Edge laying around. And you may find files that were built in Inventor that you want to use in SOLIDWORKS, or built in NX and you want to use in SOLIDWORKS. We want to make sure we give you an opportunity to use those seamlessly. In some cases, you've migrated all over to SOLIDWORKS, and in that case, we want to make sure we can take and use what you already have in Pro E and Inventor and Solid Edge. So we want to make sure we encompass these three types of users today. So to break these down a little further, the supplier content users kind of look like this. You might create a SOLIDWORKS model, pull in a model from Inventor, put it all together and create a complete SOLIDWORKS model. The difference is we want to make sure that if that model gets changed in Inventor, that we have an opportunity for it to update inside of SOLIDWORKS. Okay? So that's a supplier content user. Now, with a design vendor, typically there's some part or parts that are being created externally, maybe in another package, in this case, CATIA, and you might use it to create tooling or add it to your existing assembly and design around it. The expectation, though, is when the model changes, in this case you can see that that little cutout in the side changed, you really want it to update inside of SOLIDWORKS. Now, when I say it changed, I'm talking the vendor in CATIA makes a model edit. You want that file to end up in SOLIDWORKS and have both the tooling or associated files update. And this gives that seamless feeling relationship between external CAD and SOLIDWORKS CAD. Okay? And then, as I mentioned, the third type of user, the legacy CAD systems, the multi-CAD environments, we want to make sure we can take advantage of all the data that you've created over the years and utilize it going forward in new designs. So when SOLIDWORKS did a survey about migrating data, and this term is probably a little tighter than I'd want for this conversation, but when we talk migrating data, we're just talking data that's in another format, how we get it into SOLIDWORKS and why we do it. We found that a lot of companies, and we saw this with the polls today, are just keeping seats of other CAD around for conversion, or they won't convert it until it's needed, or they'll just use the SOLIDWORKS tools, the file open convert. So there's still a pretty broad consensus on how this is done today, and that's kind of why Interconnect was developed. So if we look also at the relationship between organizations that have made migration, you know, maybe initially when you've converted from CATIA or Inventor to SOLIDWORKS, you've pulled some of your seats over and they've now become SOLIDWORKS seats. But a vast majority of your organizations, and we saw this with the polls as well, have left behind seats of CATIA, Inventor, Creo, NX, and Solid Edge to allow for edits and migration later on. So our goal with this product is to hope that you can release some of those other seats. Maybe you only need to keep one seat behind. Get rid of those extra seats, get them to SOLIDWORKS, and still have better tools to create a relationship between your existing design process and your old design process in another CAD. So I'm going to start this out with a quick demonstration. We'll call it the old way and the new way. I want to give you an idea on how we get to Interconnect. So let me first jump into SOLIDWORKS, and let's talk about the old way of bringing data in. I'm going to kind of make light of this a little bit. I understand that your process is dictated a lot by how easy this becomes for you. But if I go ahead and do a file open here, I'm at a directory that has Solid Edge, Pro-E, and some Inventor files in here. The first one, let's just try Inventor. I'm just gonna go ahead and try to open up. There should be an Inventor assembly in here. That's a Solid Edge. There's some Inventor parts. Well, let's just try an Inventor part for a moment. I go ahead and select that, and I do an open, and I get something like this. Wait a minute. Unsupported. Can't do it. Okay. That's not good. Well, let's try something different. Let's try the Solid Edge assembly. Some formats are treated differently inside of SOLIDWORKS than others. You'll notice that when I open the Solid Edge, it does create an assembly with all the files. And to go back onto that Inventor file for a moment, the reason why Inventor does an import is because one of the SOLIDWORKS requirements is I have to have Inventor view or Inventor on the system to do a translation of the data. With Solid Edge, it does a translation, it brings in the parts, but let's think about this for a moment. Let's just go to my desktop and let's look at that folder directory that we were just looking in. And you'll see that now that I've done the import of the Solid Edge data, I now have SOLIDWORKS files to manage as well. So the original Solid Edge files and then the SOLIDWORKS part files get migrated, get translated. So now I really have two sets of files to deal with. Okay, so that becomes a little bit of a management nightmare when you're dealing with a vendor that could be potentially updating these files. You would then have to re-import. You'd have to deal with the old imported files. Where do you put them? What do you do with them? So all this becomes a little bit of a pain, a big pain, not a little pain, dealing with this information. So let's talk about Interconnect for a moment. How do we work with Interconnect? Interconnect, as I mentioned, wants to allow us to seamlessly work with this data. But in order to utilize this, you got to know how to turn it on. And with the group that we have online today, it seems like it's not so easy to find. So let me demystify that for you. If I go to my tools options inside of SOLIDWORKS down to import, there's a pull-down menu in there in which I can choose these other file formats: Inventor, CATIA, Creo, NX, and Solid Edge. When I select that, that will give me the option just below to enable 3D Interconnect. When I enable 3D Interconnect, this changes the way that we deal with external files. Now let me show you this. If I now do a file open and I browse to that same directory and pick that Solid Edge file, okay, it's going to go ahead and open that file. The difference being, when the file comes in, it's going to have no converted files in that directory in the background. What we're physically doing is we're connecting ourselves directly to the native CAD. So you can see here the symbology is going to be a little different, and we'll review that a little further. So here's what you want to think about. The old way is translation. The old way is the software trying to understand all the surfaces and faces and put it together to create a solid model in a new, completely different format. The new way is for us just to be able to utilize the existing CAD data in its native format and point to it, just like adding an existing SOLIDWORKS file in there, just like you would if you were an inventor and you want to add to a different part in there. That's all I'm doing, is inserting, in this case, a Solid Edge file directly into a model. Okay, so that's SOLIDWORKS Interconnect. That's how you turn it on. back to my PowerPoint for a moment. What I want to outline with the rest of our presentation is what we see as some workflows to deal with this data, where it comes from, and how it updates. So I'm going to start by talking a little bit about assembly references. When I say assembly references, this is working in SOLIDWORKS. Somebody gives me a file format that's not SOLIDWORKS native. How do I bring it into SOLIDWORKS, create the assembly the rest of the way using that data, and have it update? So here's what we're going to do. We're going to put a battery pack in this assembly unit, and we want to build it so that that sheet metal part will encompass the battery pack so it fits nice and snug. So if you look at this video here, what we're able to do is now in SOLIDWORKS, when we go to insert components, you'll notice that the list is a little bit different. So our insert component list, which is the same way we add regular SOLIDWORKS parts to an assembly, now allows us to add other file formats directly to the assembly. Now this is going to follow, because I have Interconnect on, the new Interconnect format. I'm just embedding a ProE file, embedding an Inventor file in this case into this. So by selecting the Inventor file, I can browse to where the existing data is, in this case the Inventor assembly. And when I say insert component, it resolves it exactly as it does SOLIDWORKS, and I just drop it into my assembly. Now the next thing we want to really focus on is what the feature tree looks like in SOLIDWORKS when I do this. Because the feature tree gives us indications that we have an external connection to these files. If you look at the symbol on each of those, this symbol shows us that we have an external reference. We have a pointer to the original Inventor files. Okay, the names all come in, the structure all comes in, the planes from that Inventor file come in. What we would do at this point is continue to design. We would use the planes to mate. We would use the existing surfaces on the model to be able to position this exactly where we want it. In this particular case, that sheet metal strap that holds in the battery pack, we want to control its position based upon the thickness of the battery pack. If we think about the current process, if we were to do this today, we certainly could design around components that were imported from other CAD packages. The issue would be, if that particular model changed, how do I get it to update what I've already done in SOLIDWORKS? And the problem with our existing workflow without Interconnect is there is no ability to update. So here's what happens with Interconnect. When we have an update, we get the new file format from the vendor or from your customer. We just replace it directly in the directory. We overwrite the old, so there's still only one version of the Inventor file. And if you look inside of SOLIDWORKS, you'll now see the symbol for the battery pack has an update symbol directly on top of it. You can right-click, select Update Model, and the software will update it directly from an Inventor model. All the face IDs, all the planes, all the mates, any downstream work that you've done automatically updates because of the way we connect directly to the original file. Okay? So there's one workflow. The second workflow has to do with finding data in other formats and adding downstream features to the original CAD models. So in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to open up a ProE file. Notice ProE has an extension on the end of their files that is the version of the file. So it's PRT.1, which is the version of the file that we're going to open. And when I open it into SOLIDWORKS, it doesn't open like we're used to with translated data, and it actually creates a derived part. So it's a SOLIDWORKS part file with a pointer to the external ProE file within it. Okay, so now it's linked to that Pro-E file. No translation has occurred. I can go ahead at this point and I can start doing some downstream work, whether I'm doing manual modification or I'm using the library features inside of SOLIDWORKS. I can still make some changes to this model. And we can do this today without Interconnect. What we wouldn't be able to do is update the original model at any point in time. So here I have a simple change. We're going to go ahead and put this inside my assembly, get it positioned properly. And you'll notice that the slot doesn't quite fit up properly with the location that we desire for the pin on the other side. So what do we do in this case? In this case, we call the vendor. We say, hey, you know, this file doesn't quite fit. Oh, you know what? I sent you the wrong version. I sent you the old version. Well, you know what? You just put in time into your engineering, putting the slot in there, putting the keyway in there, mating it in position. The last thing you want to do is download a new file and have it mess up everything you've done. Well, you have no choice in today's workflow without Interconnect. What we're going to do with Interconnect is we're going to give you a methodology to do that. We're going to get the new Creo file. It's .2. You just paste it into the same directory. You'll see the rebuild symbol, and you'll be able to right-click and select Update Model. You'll notice that the keyway and the curved slot don't blow up. They stay intact. If we go to the assembly, the mates also stay intact. Okay, so we can do downstream edits, and if the model changes at any point in time, you're going to be able to get that update as well. The third process takes us to how do we go from interconnect, which is the connection externally, to a process where I might want to edit the model or import it directly so I can maybe make a change to a feature that already exists, maybe run FeatureWorks. So here's a scenario that will outline that. Inside of a SOLIDWORKS assembly, I can just do Insert Components, select the Solid Edge Assembly. It's going to work just like a SOLIDWORKS file, as I mentioned before. The feature tree for the Solid Edge Assembly has the symbology that we mentioned before with the external link. I can go ahead and make this in position. When I made it in position, I realized that one of the holes are off. Well, I can't get a hold of the vendor. I don't know what the vendor's doing here. I need to make this edit on this mounting plate. So what do I do in this case? In this particular case, I need to unlink myself from the existing external file by breaking the link. I can right-click on it. I can break the link, and this is breaking the link on the assembly. Once I've broken the link on the assembly, the parts underneath it are still linked. Okay, so they still have a connection to the original model. So in order for me to properly make the update on one of the parts, I'd also want to break the link on the part that I want to update. So remember, I'm not just doing downstream edits. I'm changing the model as it came to me. So I'm editing the original model. If I break this link, that allows me to see what we traditionally see with an imported model. Okay, so this is using file open import capability of SOLIDWORKS, just like we had it before. It basically turns on that import, and there we go. Now, once we have that disconnected, you can see the other two components are still connected to the external files. I can now come in here, run FeatureWorks on a whole, and get feature history built back into the model. In this case, it just right-click, edit feature. That builds in the FeatureWorks whole directly into the imported model. And now I can go ahead and make some assembly edits. Now, keep in mind, I'm only editing the one part. The other ones are externally connected still. And I can line up the holes and give me my proper alignment for that motor plate to meet what I desire. So 3 very different workflows. I think they fit a lot of the ways that we use data. if you're sitting there with existing CAD packages and CAD data, the ability to just take that data and utilize it in SOLIDWORKS in any of these three methods is very important. So let's dig down a little further on the 3D Interconnect tool. When they released 3D Interconnect, they made it very clear that the way that we connect and read the data out of these files is completely different than the existing translation tools that exist in SOLIDWORKS. In other words, if you've translated an Inventor file into SOLIDWORKS in previous releases, 2016 and back, the result is going to be a lot different than if you use 3D Interconnect to bring it in, because the tools are completely different. You'll also notice the support is for multiple versions of each of those CAD packages. Now, just for my own sake, I wanted to do a little bit of work to understand how far back this goes. Pro E16 was released about 97. So we support file formats all the way back to Pro E16 to use the same process that we just illustrated today. And you can see the other dates, 2002, 96. So we support back a long ways with a lot of legacy CAD data, the ability to open it up, make a connection externally, and work with it. Now, I want to talk about how you get it. Well, if you're not a SOLIDWORKS user, you would have to buy a seat of SOLIDWORKS and you would get it. If you are a SOLIDWORKS user, I showed you how to turn it on, but if you turn it on in pre-release 1 or Service Pack 1, most of you should only be Service Pack 1, when you go to turn on Interconnect, it might say beta. And it was actually a public beta for SP0 and SP1. Just be aware, at SP2, the product was physically released. So when you do go to Service Pack 2, you will see a full release ready to go for you. Now, a couple other frequently asked questions that I want to make sure we get out of the way here. Is solid surfaces and references supported? Yes. So surface models will work as well. Currently, we do not support mates, so you're not going to be able to import an assembly that has movement and keep it intact with an external link like we have it today. Metadata, so linking to custom properties, things like iProperties and custom properties in Creo, that will be supported in 2018. They've already announced that at SOLIDWORKS World. Currently, we don't support 3D PMI. With this is CADimensions. I know CATIA does a lot of that. We don't support that. No drawings as of yet. No simulation data. Okay, we are going to support curves and sketches. And this will be also new for 2018. When a vendor of yours sends you a neutral file format, we no longer are going to have to translate that. We are going to be able to make a connection to the STEP file, ACES file, IGES file. Therefore, if they send us another one, we can automatically update it in SOLIDWORKS and all our downstream work will be intact. Okay? Jump to the next page here for a moment. How is Interconnect packaged? Well, the PTC, UG, Inventor, and Solid Edge Interconnect tools are part of SOLIDWORKS standard. They're part of the base package. The only one that you would need premium for is the CATIA connection. Okay, so everybody who is a SOLIDWORKS user online does have Interconnect and will be able to turn it on. It will be whether or not you can connect to CATIA. How does it work with SOLIDWORKS PDM? Well, these other file formats can be stored in PDM and we just reference them directly. What's nice is we're not translating them, we're not creating an extra set of files. It's so much cleaner to work with. One set of files, it makes a huge difference in managing that. Is Inventor still required for translation? And the answer is no. I showed you earlier when I went to open Inventor file, it said it's unsupported. Well, it didn't see Inventor on my system. It didn't see Inventor View. With Interconnect, you no longer have to have Inventor. You can now turn that on and open Inventor files to bring it in. The format updates that come from these competitive softwares. Let's say Creo comes out with Creo version 4. SOLIDWORKS is committing to being able to connect to those models within 3 months of the update. So it'll be a very quick turnaround to be able to support those products, and we can continue to utilize the existing process that I laid out for you today. So I hope you were able to see some new ideas, new ways of dealing with data that are coming from other CAD packages today. If you have any questions, feel free to send me an email at kevin@CADimensions.com. Hopefully get started today. Turn on Interconnect and get using it. If you have any questions, you can post them in the questions section as well. I want to thank you for attending, and take care.
Don't forget to check us out on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and our blog for more great content by clicking on the links in the description below.